There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.
Hi guys, Simon here and welcome to the Triple F for a very special episode of Under the Floodlights. Tom Canton from the Gooner Talk joined me yesterday to cover Arsenal's new midfield general, Thomas Partey. The Gooner Talk is a very popular and fantastic YouTube and podcast channel which provides excellent tactical breakdown, insightful discussion, debates and raw reactions for all things Arsenal. I've been following TGT for the last couple of years, so it's such a pleasure to have Tom on the Triple F, and we had a great chat talking about what Partey's arrival means to Arsenal, what kind of player he is and what the future could spell for the Gunners with him playing such a big part in the team. I really had a great time recording this one and I hope you guys enjoy. Bit weird to be talking to you because I've followed your show for about 2 years and a massive fan of all of your content. But yeah, it's almost like the sort of man on the TV is talking back to me. So having this interaction sort of things is a bit odd.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. It's the option to talk about a player that I really love. So that's always a good incentive, I suppose. But no, absolute pleasure, mate. And I appreciate you supporting the channel.
No worries at all. No worries at all. Because I see you've had quite a few heated discussions of late. So hopefully this show is going to be a bit of a respite for you and more of a celebratory space, shall we say.
Yeah. I mean, it's Arsenal, so you can't really not have any heated discussions usually. But it'd be nice to break away from that, I suppose. Yeah.
Exactly. And we're coming off the back of 2 great wins as well. So this is always good.
Yeah. Great wins. Yeah. Fantastic one.
Excellent. So, yeah, from watching your shows this season, I think we're pretty much in agreement when we think about how this season's playing out. Although it's been a very disappointing campaign, which is the sort of understatement of the century, you can see it's essentially a transitional one for Arteta to build upon and assess which players and tactics he can use going forward. As Arsenal fans, we've had to endure terrible performances and results this season and will possibly end up quite low in the table in relation to the standards of the club. But if you look at it on the surface, there are signs of promise, there are signs of potential, and there are glimmers of hope that we can build on. The players that we should be excited about in terms of their part to play in Arsenal's foreseeable future are the likes of Bukayo Saka, the likes of Kieran Tierney, Emil Smith-Rowe, our new summer signing Gabriel, and another summer transfer, the man we are focusing the show upon today, the Ghanaian governor, the octopus, Thomas Partey. Considering we haven't seen too much of him in an Arsenal shirt this season due to injury and him not really performing to the best of his expected ability as of yet, can you tell me what it is about Partey that excites you for the future?
I think the main thing is that he's just such a big upgrade on what we've already got at the club, because we've kind of suffered a little bit of a rut, I guess, with not improving on what we've already got with the signings that we've made. And every couple of seasons, you start from 2013, bringing in likes of Ozil, the year later bringing in Alexis Sanchez, Aubameyang came a little bit after that, after we brought in Lacazette. And I mean, even Lacazette, I'd look at as, I don't think has necessarily progressed us, say, beyond what Olivier Giroud gave us. But in really key areas like midfield and defence, we signed players that, as I say, didn't progress us. I didn't think that Granit Xhaka at the time necessarily took us ahead of what we already had, and then he definitely didn't. The back squadron, Mustafi never took us ahead, even though we spent a lot of money on him. Socrates is another one as well. We had Koscielny at the time. We brought in Mustafi and Socrates, and neither of those two were better than Koscielny. And the way that you progress and improve is by bringing in players that improve on what you've got. So Partey last summer, for me, and especially being kind of Arteta's first summer window, in combination, seeing Arsenal go out and not only bring in a top-class centre-back in Gabriel, but bring in Thomas Partey, who in my view is a world-class centre midfielder and has proven that in the Champions League for Atletico Madrid for a number of years. It's just a different change, and was the change that I've wanted to see, and why I've kind of backed the process, as we've called it, because of signings like that.
You've mentioned before in the TGT that you're obviously a big fan of Spanish football. So when was it that you first became of Partey's talents, and when do you think he started to announce himself in Spain?
Obviously, he worked in the Athletic Youth Academy before getting a couple of loans out with Almeria and Mallorca, but I first became aware of him when he was playing fully for Atletico Madrid. Like, my love of La Liga goes back probably about 5-ish years when I was at university. That was when I first became quite a bit, really got into it and was able to watch more football in my spare time at weekends when it wasn't either going out and clubbing for uni, it was watching football on the weekends, and it wasn't Arsenal. I was desperate to see more football, and it was La Liga that I went to. And that's where I saw Partey playing. And it was just a case of he was so different to the league, because La Liga, you were like really kind of associate with the technical skill of quick passing and dynamic play. And then you've got this absolute bruiser of a midfielder of Partey, but has the intelligence of a lot of the kind of more diminutive, small attacking players that you find in La Liga. And he still managed to encompass kind of both of those raw attributes in a really kind of harmonious way, I suppose. And that's why I always wanted him to come in. That's why Arsenal have scouted him for many, many years. But Arsenal have done that classic thing where they wait kind of really too long, I suppose, with players and end up having to pay a lot of money, which they did in Partey, way less than he's actually worth. There is, in my mind, no way that it couldn't be considered a bargain to spend 45 million on a world-class centre midfielder like Thomas Partey, who's still only 27 years of age. I think that's an amazing deal that they've got done, and mental that Atletico kind of allowed that release clause to exist, especially in Spain where release clauses are massive. Like Saul, for instance, at Atleti has a 150 million euro release clause right now. Neymar had something that was actually, in the context of his contract, quite low, and that's why PSG came out and bought his. Sometimes clubs make mistakes, and I think that's what allows teams like PSG to go get Neymar and ourselves to go and get Partey. But that's sort of where the first time I saw him came through.
If you could sort of rate from a sort of scale of 1 to 10, the likelihood or the expectation of from yourself of expecting Partey to arrive at Arsenal, where would you sort of rate that?
In terms of like what was I expecting from him output-wise, or how likely I expected him to turn up at Arsenal?
Yeah, the latter.
None. So there was absolutely no chance in hell that I ever thought Arsenal, because of the things we talked about, like how I thought Arsenal had just not been able to buy in those players regularly that improved on the squad. And funnily enough, it's always usually players. I talk about so many players on the channel, like doing tactical breakdowns and stuff like that, and barely any of them come to fruition. So when I was in the summer of 2020, I must have done a good like 6 or 7 videos on Partey. And actually in January of 2020, I did a video with John Driscoll, the Sky Sports commentator for La Liga. And he basically turned around and was like, there's no chance of Partey going to Arsenal. And of course, we spoke to John again later on in the summer when we had got him in and got his thoughts on things. And we spoke to Alvaro Romeo as well, who's the Spanish correspondent for TalkSport and the Football Weekly pod as well. So it's so weird that it came to fruition. It's great that it did. I still can't believe it. I mean, our sponsors at TGT Football Prizes have got a signed Thomas Partey shirt as the prize this week, and it's already like flying off. The tickets are going mental already. So yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, even I bought tickets for this one. I don't usually. I think like I've got to be fair. Let everyone try and win it. But I was like, I'm sorry, I need to get tickets for this Partey deal. So, but yeah, unreal that we got him.
Yeah. It's an immense prize, so I might have a sort of cheeky look at that.
They're going quick, so you have to be on it.
If you're enjoying Under the Floodlights, then you might enjoy our other podcasts. The Triple F show is jam-packed with general football discussion. The Magic Of is a show which profiles special clubs from all over the world to find out all about their history, culture and their fan base. And the Triple F Cinema is where guests and I review weird and wacky football films.
Considering we as sort of Arsenal fans have had fairly sort of little sample size to judge his performances on, I mean, could you perhaps give us a little bit more of an insight into what type of player he really is?
I mean, obviously what we've seen at Arsenal has been limited by the injuries that he's had. But what you saw in the first few performances, I mean, you saw it when he came on against Manchester City for his debut at the Etihad. He got the ball and he ran with it. And that is what he is about. He just takes and transforms the play. He takes the ball from the defensive third into the final third. He has, I think, because of the changing league, experienced a few troubles because the defensive side of the Premier League is much better. He has lost the ball in a couple of occasions, which especially happened at the kind of last 20 minutes of the North London derby. There was a moment where he tried to progress the ball out and he got caught. And then that led to obviously him giving away a free kick against Kane, which obviously we're very fortunate not to concede from. And I think that'll come with time, that he'll kind of learn and adapt to the different pressures. But he is, in terms of his style, just someone that loves to be on the ball. Like you, as we talked about with La Liga, associated with these small, diminutive, low centre of gravity players that can just, like Messi is a perfect example, that just weave in between defenders and midfielders. He doesn't have that same skill to be able to do that, but uses what he does have, which is his raw, like just beast mode, that I suppose is the best way to describe it, of just pushing players off the ball. But also, you can't get close to him, because as soon as you do, he just has a way of just kicking the ball around players and accelerating onto it and taking it forward. His interception and reading of the game is also unbelievably good. The amount of interceptions I think he had in comparison to other players when he joined was a joke. You completely saw. It was interesting because when we signed Lucas Torreira under Unai Emery, he had that same effect when he came in. Immediately, he was, oh, wow, this guy's nicking the ball off people, intercepting passes. But Partey just does it to a level where he does that, takes the ball, and then does something really intelligent with it, which is where we kind of draw the line between him and players like Torreira, for sure.
Are the Patrick Vieira comparisons fair or wider than mark, do you reckon?
I think they're closer than we've ever kind of had to compare it to anyone else. A lot of people, I think, misinterpret what Vieira was, because people talked about, oh, Arsenal need to sign Vieira, like we haven't replaced Vieira, and everyone kind of associated that ideal with Arsenal not signing a defensive midfielder, which is wrong, because Gilberto Silva was the defensive midfielder in that Invincible side. Vieira was the eights in front of him that would, as we've talked about with Partey, progress the play up the pitch, would get into attacking positions, would score a couple of goals when the time came, and really good kind of interchange of passing, which I think Vieira's passing outstrips Partey's. And Partey, that's not to say Partey isn't a good passer of the ball. You can see with the incisive passing that he has between the defensive lines, he finds those gaps. We saw the pass into Saka against Spurs, I think it was, when he tried to turn and set up Laka. It didn't quite go to plan. But it's that type of pass that he's got in his repertoire. And he's certainly the closest, because, of course, the similarities with his size, the position, the way he moves the ball across the pitch. It's as close as I think you can get to a Vieira comparison as we have done. And it's nice that it's a player that's actually in the correct position being compared to Vieira, rather than a defensive midfielder that have previously, I suppose, been compared to it.
Yeah, it is. It's massive sort of comparisons to make, I know, but it's obviously one that sort of gets battered around a lot, and it's one that you can obviously see why those comparisons are there. So it's kind of why I asked the question. But let's hope he can live up to the levels of Vieira, because that's some way to go.
At the end of the day, obviously, Arsenal fans are always going to, I guess, look at the Invincibles as the pinnacle, and the players that played in that team as the pinnacle. And it's always going to be, who's the next Vieira, who's the next Ashley Cole, who's the next Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, etc., etc. And I don't like doing it. I think Partey is an anomaly, because he is quite so similar to what Patrick Vieira was, that you've got those comparisons. But I don't really like doing it that way, because I want Arsenal to kind of forge their own identity going forwards with the new manager, because we're never going to have an Invincibles team again. It's just not going to happen. We aren't going to play that style because we don't have that manager. Those players don't exist anymore. There is no point trying to recreate the Invincibles. Yeah, we can try and get some nice free-flowing football and get nice interchange of play, but I just want to see an Arsenal side that's entertaining, that wins games and is resolute defensively, which the Invincible side was, but it's going to be done in a different way, under a different coach with different players. So people do kind of need to get that old, he's the new, etc., out of their minds, I think, with players.
What would you say Arteta's trying to build at the moment then?
It's an interesting question, because it's been one of the biggest criticisms, I think, of Arteta, especially from people that are kind of done with him at this point and would rather we moved on. It's one of the biggest things. And they're quite right to say it at times. I think it's been really hard to see a definitive style from Arteta. I personally believe that is a lot down to what's available to him. I think that he didn't have a number 10 up until Boxing Day when Smith Rowe came in. And since that point, and getting Erdegaard in as well, of course, that we're starting to see what he wants. He wants quick, fluid play. He wants to be dangerous on the counter. He wants to be resolute defensively. He wants to utilise those wide areas really well and get the likes of Saka and Pepe in behind where possible, get Aubameyang and Lacazette, whoever's in the middle, opportunities with kind of cutbacks and low-driven crosses, rather than all of those crossing moves that we saw at the start of the season that frustrated so many. I don't think that's what he wants. I still think that maybe we should look to bring in a striker that gives us a little bit more aerial threat, but I don't think that's ultimately what he does want. I think he wants more the low driven type of cutback crossing and chance creation that we saw more against Leicester and against Burnley in the last couple of games, that we didn't get to take those chances, I suppose. And Pepe missed obviously a great chance against Burnley with the one that came across to him. They're the types of chances I think that Arteta wants to see us create more often. I also think he wants us to be a team that is like fearsome, a team that has characters in it like Gabriel and Partey that are intimidating, that win games in the dressing room, not in the dressing room, but win games in the tunnel before the game. It'd be great if we could win them in the dressing room. But obviously, we'll settle for the tunnel, would be great. But we kind of have lacked that. And ironically, we go back to the Invincibles again, because that was a team that did win games in the tunnel because they were just so intimidating. Other teams look like it's the way that Man City have got this vibe about them now that I'm very envious of, because teams do just roll over, or to the point where if you're a title challenger, it gives you an edge, not only because of the quality that you have, but that there are teams lower down the table that give us a lot of problems because they really turn up for those games. But usually they identify games like City and they end up actually rotating some of their best players out of those teams and those games, because they know that, well, we're probably going to lose against City no matter who we play. So let's save some of our best players when we play against the Fulhams, the Brightons and the teams further down the table. But they don't against Arsenal, because Arsenal have got this kind of mindset and this reputation now that we're gettable, that we're able to be beaten and we're able to be got at. And if you give us a bit of a kick, or if Troy Deeney says we don't have any cojones, you can get at us, which is completely true. And whilst I didn't like him for saying it, he was 100% spot on. Like, that is the case. So I think that Arteta will want a side, and Edu has spoken about this as well, by bringing in players like Gabriel and Partey that give you that added element of physicality in combination with quality and intelligence on the ball, that will change how Arsenal are perceived on the pitch.
I'm in agreement with you here as well. And I do think what Arteta is trying to build and the right sort of players that he's looking to bring in are absolutely perfect for the club. And I think they're absolutely perfect for the future of this club as well. So I'm more than excited to see where we go with Arteta. Seeing as Arteta likes to have two at the base of his midfield and has earmarked Thomas as that key man in the centre of his team, do you think Partey's most effective central midfield partner is already at the club, or should we look elsewhere?
I tweeted this morning saying that I think that the one thing that needs to be lost from Arsenal is a bit of sentimentality, because no matter what I think about Granit Xhaka or Ceballos or El Neni or whoever, or even Partey himself as a footballer, if there is a chance for Arsenal to go out there and sign a better player, a considerably better player than we've already got, they need to go out there, in my mind, and do it. Now, that isn't to say that I don't appreciate what Granit Xhaka is, and I think I say it on TGT all the time. I do appreciate the footballing talent that Granit Xhaka provides. The issue with him is that he'll have 12 good games, but within those 12 good games, there'll be one cataclysmic error, like we saw against Burnley, that will happen. And it happens considerably. I think it's happened less under Arteta, but the issue is that stigma around him has already been ingrained. And the issue that he created, I don't want to say created for himself, because he was goaded into it by some horrible people online with the Crystal Palace situation where he told the fans to F off, etc. That is never going to go. That's going to stick with him and a lot of the fan base, and he won't be forgiven by a lot of the fan base. I have sympathy for that. I can't not necessarily forgive him, but I can't never kind of move that from my mind. As I've said, I like him as a player. I'm not the biggest fan of Granit Xhaka, the person. I think that he went through a horrific time, and the abuse that he received for him and his wife and his child was utterly abhorrent. But at the same time, you have to try and maintain professionality. You are a public figure. I don't want to bring money into it, but like, you are up in that echelon. You're on a pedestal as a footballer, and you still do need to try and maintain, because a lot of footballers get abused, and that's not to justify it. No. It's just that it's about how you handle yourself in those situations. And feel free to do an interview outside of the game and call those people out, like he and Bernd Leno have done recently. But yeah, to react in the ground like that when he'd had a poor performance against Crystal Palace and was being subbed off because he had a poor performance. And that, fans are probably going to boo you for that. They're probably going to. So just internalize it, wait till you're off the pitch and go kick a bottle off the ground in the dressing room or something. But yeah, that was the wrong time. But I feel like we're going off a bit of a tangent now.
It's okay, mate. Don't worry about
it. I don't think necessarily that Partey's perfect partner is at the club, because I mean, I've written a couple of articles now about, and I think I've offered up 10, I think it is now, options that Arsenal could look at. One that obviously a lot of people want is Yves Bissouma from Brighton. They would love him to come in. He's done really, really well there. Malian international. There are others. There are players out there like Dennis Zakaria at Borussia Mönchengladbach. Saul, ironically, at Atletico Madrid. A lot of people would think, Arsenal couldn't go and get Saul. But I always kind of reference the Partey deal to say that, look, you don't have these restrictions on yourself anymore. Anything can happen in football. And Saul isn't happy at Atletico Madrid now. He actually wants out, if reports are to be believed. And Atleti apparently willing to kind of deal in the region of 40 to 50 million euros, which is very similar to the Partey price, obviously. And I think that Arsenal, if it always will come down to the ownership at the end of the day, because Arsenal under this ownership, under the amount of investment that we've had, are not going to be where we want them to be, period. It's just not going to happen. So unless they start investing, unless Arsenal start recruiting more smartly and selling more smartly, and all of those things come together, we aren't going to progress. But if we do those things, we can get the Sauls of this world, no matter if we're in the Champions League or not, because money talks in football. I used to never think it did. I used to sit on the Gooner Talk with Craig doing the shows and be like, look, you can't just go out and buy whoever, because... and they would always come back and say that every footballer's got a price. And that's something that I've certainly changed my mind to and realised that, you are right, that every player does have a price, and there is a way to get a player into a club, be it wages, be it ambition, be it the price of the fee for the club. So I think we do need to go out and sign ultimately a player that's going to partner Partey or whoever else in any other position, for sure.
If you're interested in coming on the show for an Under the Floodlights special to talk about your favourite player or manager, please email the triplef2021@gmail.com or DM the triplef84 on Twitter. All contact details will be in the episode description. Hope you're all keeping safe, and thanks again for listening to the Triple F.
I'm really interested to know your thoughts on this, but I mean, the window may have closed on this one, and that ship may have sailed. But with Houssem Aouar, I know with a lot of Arsenal fans, they were expecting the likes of Houssem Aouar, if he were to come in. It was extremely close that he almost came into the club. That was very much a possibility. But I think a lot of Arsenal fans were expecting him to be that number 10, that sort of operator in that space, if you will. He sort of operates more as that number 8, really, and I think we would sort of see him operating alongside Thomas Partey. So what are your thoughts on Houssem Aouar possibly? Like I said, the likelihood of us signing Houssem Aouar doesn't look as if it's going to happen again, but like you said with Sal, you never know with football, you never know with Arsenal. We might actually go back in for him, and considering Arteta is a massive fan of Houssem Aouar, that might happen. What's your thoughts on Houssem Aouar possibly sort of partnering Thomas Partey in that sort of middle of the park?
I agree with you that I think that the ship has probably sailed. One, because I don't think Leon are the biggest fans of us, based on how we dealt with them in the summer. I don't think Aouar is probably the biggest fan. I think he made that quite clear with some of the interviews that he did, that he wasn't that fussed. I think he's got ambitions of Real Madrid and Juventus more than he does Arsenal. And I mean, as an Arsenal fan, you go, well, screw you. But as a football fan, you go, I mean, you probably would rather go to Real Madrid or Juventus over Arsenal right now. I mean, it's pretty clear. But I think that I'm okay with us that we didn't get him. From the research, I knew nothing about him really before the summer. Absolutely nothing. Obviously, doing the tactical breakdown shows, I have to go out there and watch a lot of the player. I'm not a big watcher of Liga, and that's why I'm lucky to have Jeremy Smith as a mate who covers Liga like it's his wife. It's ridiculous how much he covers Liga, and he knows it like the back of his hand. And the words which stuck in my mind from him were always, and I always repeat it whenever talking about him, was that when Leon aren't playing well, Aouar isn't playing well. He doesn't rise above a poor performance of Leon. He doesn't raise the bar like Thomas Partey can raise the bar of Arsenal. If Leon are in a slump, Aouar will drop down to that level and will play at that turgid level.
Slight Ozil then.
Yes, no, exactly. It's perfect. The perfect example. Ozil never, for me, there was only 1 or 2 or 3 displays where I thought Ozil really dragged Arsenal by the scruff of the neck. The Leicester at home under Unai Emery comes to mind. There's I think the Napoli at home in his first kind of Champions League season comes to mind too. But there weren't too many. The Aston Villa FA Cup final, thankfully, that was another one that he did really well in too. But he never, for me, was a player that would drag Arsenal forwards to a victory. He was someone that if we're playing well, he would accentuate that and make Arsenal even better. But our similars, I think, is that he wouldn't do that. In terms of positioning, I think, as you say, he could play next to Partey. I think you would do that against the sides like your lesser teams and that, and then you go for a more defensive structure against some of the bigger six sides, and then maybe move Aouar into more of an advanced role. I actually think that he would be a very good signing if he was to be played in kind of the Emile Smith-Rowe role when Ødegaard plays.
Right.
So when Emile Smith-Rowe is kind of that second number 10, and being that added little bit of fluidity and dynamism and creativity alongside Ødegaard. And I think that accentuates how good Ødegaard's been. And I think a lot of people would say, why are you putting Emile Smith-Rowe on the wing? Well, a man of the match display against Tottenham Hotspur, I think, showed why he can play that kind of wide. It's not even wider because he comes so central when he's playing there. But I think that's kind of where Aouar may fit in better to a side. So if he was to go to Juventus, you would see him kind of interplaying with Ramsey, with Dybala, and with kind of their more attacking Chiesa and these guys, rather than actually alongside someone at the base, like a McKennie or whoever. I think is Khedira not even there anymore, is he? I'm losing my Juventus.
No, Khedira's gone back to Germany.
Who's at the base of Juventus' midfield now?
I'm just trying to think of the last time I played FIFA. Mind you, I stay clear of Juve on FIFA because I don't like playing as Piedmont, Calcio, or whatever they're called.
It is Artur who they signed for
Barcelona.
And they've got Bentancur, Rabiot, McKennie. So when you think of like that, and I think maybe that Artur being at Juve, for me, means that Aouar wouldn't really have a place there, to be honest, because I think Artur is kind of that perfect player for them there. So he'd have a tough time getting in. So I think maybe a Real Madrid with their ageing midfield of Modric, Kroos and Casemiro probably fits perfectly in that Real Madrid team, to be honest.
Okay, so leaving the sort of dream realms of Aouar joining Arsenal, it seems more likely that Bissouma, as you mentioned before, could sort of join the club. What's your thoughts on the likelihood of Bissouma coming, and what would your thoughts be on the style of sort of football we might see if Bissouma were to join?
I think there'd be a lot of competition for him. I think it would also not necessarily depend on where Arsenal finish, because we talked about like every player has a price, but unfortunately every player has a price. But if you've got the likes of Liverpool and City or other teams or Man United in for him, which I can see the likes of Liverpool definitely being in for someone like Bissouma, and they have been linked with him, then Arsenal might struggle to convince. But saying that, we always go back with the theme of the show being Thomas Partey, is that things can happen. Bissouma could be, I think he'll definitely be like up for a move from Brighton to Arsenal, and absolutely no doubt about that. I think Brighton would want a sizable fee. They only signed him from Lille a couple of seasons ago, I think, or 2-3 seasons ago. And Lille have produced some really good players in that position now since, with Samare coming through there and doing quite well. So I think that it would require a bid of 35 million plus. You're looking at, because I remember when Leicester lost Maguire and they went in for Dunk at Brighton. I think Brighton wanted something like 40 million for Dunk at that point. So they're not a side that will be taken for mugs. No. But they will want a sizable fee if they lose one of their key players. If they go down, that might affect things. But then, I mean, Bournemouth sold Nathan Ake for a good 30 plus million to City. So who knows at this stage?
Yeah. But if he were to sign for the club, I mean, let's go into the dream realms again. And if he were to sign, what kind of partnership could we expect to see between him and Partey?
I think the fact that they're not necessarily so similar that they would clash. I think Bissouma would be a little bit more reserved than Partey is, for sure. But I think it would add that mobility that you don't have from Granit Xhaka next to him. I think that when Partey is caught out of position, when he's progressed the ball, maybe he's lost it in the Premier League, which happens more often than La Liga, Bissouma would be a much kind of more mobile cover that could recover that pace, recover that ground. But also you've got that passing ability from him. He does enjoy passing behind. He can find the wide areas really well. He's very disciplined. So I think he gives you all the kind of things that Xhaka lacks, and you don't necessarily have a huge drop-off in passing potential that you have from Xhaka playing. But when I say about like replacing Xhaka with Bissouma, I'm thinking about replacing the likes of El Neni and Ceballos with Bissouma and keeping Xhaka around. So you've got kind of a trio of centre mids of Bissouma, Partey and Xhaka that can rotate, that can play when one is injured. And we've seen with Partey's injuries that we do need to sign that centre midfielder, not only to be Partey's partner, but to be his replacement when he does have these injury issues.
Yeah, and considering we're pretty much going to be selling the likes of Guendouzi, Torreira, you can't really afford to get rid of Xhaka as well. So we can't have too much of a sea change, really. So, having seen a fair few of his long-range pole driving goals on various YouTube compilations, is it just a matter of time before we see him scoring one for the Arsenal?
The thing about YouTube compilations is there's a reason why you've seen a lot of those. It's because they only pick those ones. And the shots that we're seeing at Arsenal are what 9 times out of 10 he does. So yeah, it may be that we're only a few more absolute shanks of the ball away from a good long range strike, but it's not. I wouldn't say that Thomas Partey is a specialist at long range goals any more than anyone else, I suppose, is a specialist, because he takes quite a few of them. Like Ruben Neves is known for a lot of long-range strikes at Wolves, but he misses a hell of it. So is Granit Xhaka. When you think about Xhaka as a long striker of a ball, but they miss a lot. And Partey is kind of in that. But as soon as you get a few that go in the top corner, all of a sudden you're labelled as kind of this specialist from long range, and your long-range stat on FIFA goes up by like 30. So I think that maybe he'll hit one from range. And he has got a hell of a kind of a powerful drive when he does really connect with it. It's not consistent. No. I don't think it will stop him from trying them, that's for sure.
No, I mean, considering Arteta is, you can see obviously the Olympia. I'm going to try and pronounce this properly because I watched your show the other day. Olympiacos,
Olympiacos. Yeah.
The game against Olympiacos, we 2 thunderbolts. So Arteta is obviously encouraging the players to take those shots on. So it's just a matter of time before we see Partey bang one of those in. Tom, have the faith. Have the faith. Excellent, Tom. I think that's pretty much everything, mate. Thank you so much again for coming on the show. Still have to pinch myself that you've come on. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's really not that big of a deal. I'm just some guy.
It is, mate. It is. It's like what you said on one of your shows when you had Arsblog on your show. So for me, you're my Arsblog, mate.
Sure. I appreciate that, mate.
No worries at all. Cool. Take care, mate.
Thank you so much for listening to the Triple F. If you could please drop a like on our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter, that would be massively appreciated. Hope you're all keeping safe, and thanks again for listening to the Triple F.